Thanks everyone for joining us again on KRTD Media for the second panel of the night, part two of the post March for Medicare for All strategy panel. We have Joe Firestone joining us again, and we have two other guests. So I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to introduce themselves, and then once you've introduced yourself, let everybody know which march you were associated with, the city and state, how you rate that march, what you would do better. Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
We'll start with Sabs.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Go.
With me?
Yes,
yeah, we're gonna start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Sabrina Salvati. I'm the host of Sabby Sabs podcast and the co-host of Fred Hampton Leftists podcast. And I was the MC for the Boston March. And I think I would rate that march at about a 7.
7 out of what? 7 out of 10?
10.
Yeah, 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Jerry?
Hey, everybody. My name is Jerry Vasillatos. I'm the host of Chicago Corner, affiliated with Hardlands Media and Kit and Daniel. I was a speaker at the Chicago Medicare for All March, which was organized not by us, but by some local organizers, Joy Bunton and Nimesh Patel. And I would rate the march at like a 9 out of 10. And the only reason I don't give that extra one is not for any lack of effort on the local organizers. I just think that I wish there was a very good turnout, but I know there could have been more had local media covered it, as they should have. We only had WGN there, but it was a very good crowd. And I think that it was very well organized from what I could see. I was very proud of what the local organizers managed to pull together.
Wonderful. Kit?
If I could add a little bit more onto that, my name is Kit Cabello. I'm the host of Hardlands Media. I'm also occasionally a guest co-host for Chicago Corner. And in regards to us participating for the March for Medicare for All in Chicago, I've said this before on our show, and even to a lot of the people, no one a part of our studio was part of the organizing process for March for Medicare for All. Again, Jerry just laid it out perfectly. It was Joy Button and Nimesh who actually were the ones who organized that event. We were invited to be speakers. I was one of the MCs. Jerry was a speaker at that event. And if I were to rate the March for Medicare for All in Chicago, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10. And my reasons for it is because, number one, throughout the entire event, the organizers had all of their speakers lined up and ready to go. No one was censored. I know there were a couple examples of people being silenced at some marches here and there, but that's, again, we focus only on Chicago. And as one of the main MCs running it, besides my co-host Daniel Lupker, we made sure everyone was able to speak fully and speak their minds. If I had to give some criticism, maybe I guess there should have been a larger media turnout. But again, the crew at Chicago Corner and Hardlands Media, we were able to not only do a proper live stream, but also a high definition video that was edited by Jerry, by one of our crewmen's.
Casey shot it.
Yeah, Casey was the one who shot it. And then also E. Heller helped contribute as well. He's one of our moderators. If I had to say, again, maybe there should have been more water, maybe some more shade, because it was a hot day. But I mean, all in all, it was an event where, again, people were able to speak out. I'm just nitpicking at really, what could have been there to make it better. Maybe a larger turnout, maybe more media presence. But all in all, the organizers were the ones that did it. How many people showed up? There was at least according to what I was able to see, and I'm going also by the word of my cameraman too, there was about 200 people there that attended that event from different political backgrounds, different organizations. And it was really impressive to see such a large turnout. And I think the entire crew at Hardlands Media and Chicago Corner were happy to be invited by the organizers. But I want to be very clear that we did not organize it at all. I think there were more in the march, though. I think in the march from Maggie Daly Park getting to Federal Plaza, I think there were more than 200 people. People started to disperse once we got to Federal Plaza because of the heat and because there was no shade. Yeah, okay. I mean, and again, we're just nitpicking here, but otherwise, all in all, it was a great event. But these marches have to be continuous, and that's the one thing that we have to really lay down. It just can't be one time. It has to be continuous and ongoing.
Absolutely, Joe.
Okay, so Joe Firestone is my name. I'm the host of the In-Depth Show. I'm a political scientist. That's my background. And I have a strong background in economics as well, okay, and MMT economics in particular. Okay, so I did not actually go to a march. I live about 40 miles outside of DC. It was a very hot day, and I am 82. So I was a little concerned about the heat, okay, at the march. So I stayed home. But by staying home, I got to watch, okay, a number of marches. Okay, I didn't see the Boston March, but I did see a considerable part of the LA March and just about the whole rally from Chicago. And I can confirm what Kit, okay, and Jerry had to say. I would rate that the rally anyway at a 9 to 9.5. It was very, very well organized. The transition between the speakers was very smooth. Speakers were very good and were very enthusiastic. I thought the organization was done, okay, extremely well. I concur from what I saw of the audience that there were probably roughly 200 people there or something like that. Okay, so I think you guys did a really good job on the Chicago March. But going to the Los Angeles March, I got the impression of much more confusion. And some of the speakers were actually blocked or were cut off in the middle. It seemed like the organizers of the march there were imposing rather arbitrary controls. And also, they were focused a lot on state level healthcare. And these marches were supposed to be about the national program, essentially support of NEMA. And I think that was a little bit undermined, okay, in that march because they were too much focused on CalCare, which is not what that particular march was supposed to be about.
Mhm.
I saw the contrast, contrasting that, okay, to the Washington, D.C. march. There were a number of people at the Washington, D.C. march who were proponents of both the national movement for healthcare and single payer movement in the states. But in contrast to the California people, the Washington March people only spoke about the national program. They felt they were there for that, and that's all they talked about.
Right.
Okay. And that was very well done. I thought the selection of speakers for the Washington March was really excellent too. And there were many very, very good speeches. They were very emotional speakers. You could see most of the speakers in Status Quo's coverage on it until by YouTube pulled down the Status Quo video. That was very unfortunate because those speeches, okay, were great. I don't know if they ever got them back up.
I think so.
I saw it come back up, okay, at one point.
Yep.
And then I checked it out somewhat later, okay, and it was down again. I don't know if they ever got it up on a permanent basis. I hope they did. Okay, because the Marianne Williamson speech was great. Jeff Ginter's speech was great. Savage Joy was good.
Yep.
Joe Jarvis' speech was great. You just go speaker after speaker. The Margaret Flowers speech was great. You just go through them all. It was really a terrific event. Now, in terms of the attendance, that seemed to be, from what I could see, about the same size of Chicago. And I was expecting a larger event in DC. It could be the heat of the day. It was 88 or 89 or something like that, humid, kept away people. But I think also it was the lack of support from a lot of the local Washington people because all the Congress people stayed away except for Cori Bush. And
Well, her handlers made sure she didn't talk to many,
Absolutely.
her
Oh, and I want
handlers did make sure about that. That I think was a mistake.
I think from what I saw about the marches nationally in general was that right after that, the squad decided to do their own form of direct action, right? That I think it shows that at least there's enough people out here during that one nationwide event, right? That it got something to happen from somewhere, right? That they realized that it's forcing members of Congress to realize that people want something to change, right? And it's because of this direct action that they get to hear that. I wanted to put it to the floor of what are plans for more direct action, right? Do we have anything concrete? Are there, things in play that people are working on that, we should all be, go ahead, Jerry.
Well, I want to share, the organizers here in Chicago had shared with me this past Thursday. There was a Zoom conference with, I believe it was National Medicare for All organizers. And there is an initiative to submit a complaint to the United Nations for human rights violations by the United States government, not giving American citizens Medicare for All, especially egregious in the middle of a pandemic. Now, while many might think that this is a useless effort, one of the things that had come up in the Zoom meeting, and I want to quote from the notes that I had, was that being able to file a complaint with the United Nations in regards to this is a matter of getting relief through attention. As we noticed in our national marches, there wasn't a lot of media attention, and the organizers of the Zoom meeting for the Medicare for All March, I think that it makes a lot of sense if they can follow the procedures to file a complaint with the United Nations for human rights violations in regard to the government not giving people health care during a pandemic. It's going to get a lot of world attention, and our presence in the world as far as how we're treating our citizens or how we're not treating our citizens with granting health care is going to have to make the United States accountable on the world stage. Some might think it's kind of an empty gesture and that nothing's going to happen from it, but there was a human rights violation filed after World War II for genocide by the African-American community in this country. And it got some attention and it embarrassed the United States in the eyes of the world. So I think that from my perspective, what the Medicare for All organizers are doing nationwide right now, as far as working with attorneys, sorry about my little friend here, working with attorneys and other professionals to file that kind of a complaint to get eyes on where the regular national media is not paying attention to what we're trying to do is a worthwhile effort.
I want to add on to that too. Another way we're going to have to bring attention to is not only by, again, shout out to filing out a complaint to the United Nations, but this is going to be a requirement for citizen journalists, more independent journalists. And I had a conversation with Sabrina about this when she was on our show as well. Look, there is a massive homelessness crisis that's going to be impacting this country nationwide. And it's predominantly going to affect a lot of working class communities, a lot of African-American communities, Latino communities, working poor. Everyone is going to be struggling. One of the leading causes of homelessness right now is, again, medical bankruptcy, medical debt, which is a foreign concept, or it doesn't make any sense to anyone else in the rest of the world. We have that here exclusively here in the United States, where our health insurance is tied to our jobs. And because we have this economic crisis, because we have this housing crisis, because we have student debt, because we have, again, medical debt, and so many other issues, this is a perfect storm that is brewing over that will cause more protests to happen in the streets. But in order for there to be a real movement, real change, and I said this on a show, that there needs to be a general strike. But the thing is, for there to be a successful general strike, this general strike has to be organized and it has to continue on and be continuous for 6 months. That means planning for infrastructure, maybe even more than 6 months. Planning for infrastructure, planning to make sure that the people who are protesting, that are bringing awareness to just how bad it is for the working class in this country. If we don't have the resources right now at hand to make this movement heard loud, it's going to fizzle away. It just can't be one march and it's done. It just can't be one little a protest that's going to last for a week and it's done. This has got to be in front of their homes. It has to be ongoing to where we show corporate media, the two-party system, that the people are not going away, because this is going to be a fight but it's not going to be an easy fight, because when we do say, hey, call for a general strike, it's easy for us to say that in front of a camera or either going to a protest and saying that. A lot of people agree, working, Republican, Democrats agree that we need to have Medicare for all, that we need to have more other social issues. But the thing is, a lot of people are also afraid to quit their job, because if they're gone, they lose it all too. It's a sick system that was built perfectly by those in power. And so what we have to do as citizen journalists, as independent media, is to go out there on the streets, to keep on talking about this, but also give a platform to activists and community organizers so they can speak it out. I don't know if there could be a unified hashtag general strike where there's a central command, but each state, each city is going to have to be independent and make this and be in solidarity with calling for, again, universal basic income, federal jobs guarantee act, Medicare for all, and so many other issues, because it just can't be for Medicare for all. Medicare for all is one of the base features for it, but there must be other issues to bring up as well. Mm-hmm. And it won't be an easy fight, especially as we have this midterm election cycle coming up, where again, the fear pornography of, oh no, we can't have the Republicans come to office, so everyone carry water for the Democrats, and they maybe kind of sort of will do that. And I've gotten pushback from a lot of people saying, well, how come you're so mean to the Democrats and not towards the Republicans? Because I know what to expect from the Republican establishment. They never once, no Republican lawmakers ever said, I'm for Medicare for all, and then deliver nothing.
Yep.
The squad is pandering. That's the other problem. And I think, going to Kit's point and his conversation with Sabby as well, as citizen journalists, we have to keep focus and light on this. And why I think that the initiative to file the complaint with the United Nations is important, even if it's just something that's it's about attention. It's about embarrassing the squad. I mean, so much, everybody came forward after they never showed up at the marches, but they went and tweeted about it to make it look like they cared about it and it was important to them while not doing anything, just like they haven't done anything since they all ran on claiming that they were going to be, doing something for Medicare for all in Congress. So, yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but I feel like we literally have to embarrass our elected officials with more attention, not only here in the US, since the national media just seems so disinterested, but on a world stage. I mean, the world does know how bad it is over here, but I don't know. I think this whole idea of filing the complaint with the United Nations just strengthens the attention on how completely inept and uncaring our government is, along with our elected officials that claim that they're looking out for us.
Real quick.
Yeah, I can tell you.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I got it. Hold on. Before you go, I wanted to put in the chat the only general strike organization that I've seen out there right now. I know you covered part of it, Sabs, on your show. It was the October strike organization. They've now redone their name and rebranded. Mm-hmm. I'll put their website in chat. It's now called.
And I just want to throw
Labor Movement Act
to the mix. I just want to throw into the mix of the conversation. A new healthcare study just came out. A couple of people covered it, and we're last again in the world. Yes. I want to throw that into the conversation. So.
It's an embarrassment.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. The best healthcare in the world. We just don't give it to our own people. $2 trillion and 20 years spent in Afghanistan is why we can't have healthcare for our people here, or house the homeless, or tie it into all these other movements. I mean, one of the things that also came out of my conversation with the organizers here in Chicago is that the fight for Medicare is linked to the civil rights movement. It is a civil right. And, we have to handle it the same way the civil rights movement was organized.
I was going to say that in Massachusetts, I want to make everyone aware of this. The Boston group that worked together for the march here, we actually stayed in touch with each other after the march. And I have to give credit to Kyle Davis, because he's really driven this. So we had meetings, and there's a chat group, and we got together and decided to organize another protest. Now, this one is going to be towards Richard Neal. And why is that significant? Because Richard Neal is refusing to bring the Medicare for All bill, HR 1976, to the Ways and Means Committee. That was actually told or he was driven to do that by Nancy Pelosi. So she was the one who didn't want him to bring this forward. So there is actually going to be a protest in Springfield, Massachusetts, towards him, asking him to bring this to the Ways and Means Committee. And that is going to be August 28th in Springfield, Massachusetts from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the group that I worked with for the Boston March, I will say, like, we've been in touch. I haven't been to all the meetings because I've been busy, but they have taken on more volunteers, more people to help with next steps and going forward. Another thing that's been done is there's been a letter that's been sent to Cindy Freeman. And for those who don't know, she is the one vote that's preventing this bill from being brought to a vote to the floor. It's just that one person that's stopping it. So we've also did like a mass tweet for everybody to contact the representatives. Some of them have responded. Some have co-signed on for Medicare for All. Some said we don't have the money to do it, as you can imagine, I'm sure. But we're getting more support for this than I thought that we would, but we have to put pressure on the politicians, especially the people who said they would fight for this. So that's what we're doing in reference to next steps here in Massachusetts.
You know, if I can add a little bit to what Sabrina said too, like, we do have the money. I mean, the money is there, and we have to hold these politicians accountable. And here's why, again, Sabrina brings up a good point about yelling at these politicians and making them feel uncomfortable and reminding them that they are public servants. For 20 years, trillions of dollars were wasted in Afghanistan. 20 years. And we all saw recently what happened, especially with the pullout. The Taliban is once again back in power. Now, how does this relate to Medicare for All? Well, because during that time frame of when that war started in Afghanistan, up until our potential pulling out of Afghanistan, trillions of dollars were wasted, but we were told by corporate media and the politicians that, oh, no, it's just too expensive to do student debt forgiveness. It's too expensive to do housing as a human right. It's too expensive to do Medicare for All. It's too expensive to do X, Y, and Z. It's too expensive. We don't have the money. We're going to go broke. But yet we had trillions of dollars for Afghanistan.
To shovel into killing people, not saving lives.
Okay, so there are 5 or 6 points here, okay, that I want to make. Okay, the first point is, yes, we spent $2 trillion there, and we shouldn't have. We never should have gone in there. It was a travesty. It is a travesty. It was a total waste, okay, of government money. It wasn't a waste of taxpayer money, because taxpayer money never actually gets to the Treasury. It's destroyed in settlement, actually, by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve creates entirely new money. But the more important point here is that $2 trillion but spent over 20 years is $100 billion a year. But do you know how much we spend on healthcare each year in the United States now? It's $4 trillion. So what we spent there did not stand in the way of us getting healthcare. Do you happen to know what the federal government spends on healthcare, on all things, each year? It's roughly $2.6 trillion.
Where's that directed, though? Are you talking about our Social Security program, our Medicare program, Medicare and Medicaid?
I'm talking about the Medicare program. I'm talking about the Medicaid program. I'm talking about various other programs that give aid to hospitals, okay, and other providers for facilities. I'm talking about CHIP. Okay, I'm talking about the money spent on the VA. There are many, many different kinds of healthcare programs from all sources, and a study was done by Himmelstein and Woolhandler. This was a few years ago that showed that $2.6 trillion was spent, okay, on this stuff. At the time, we were spending roughly as a nation $3.6 trillion. Now we're nearly up to $4 trillion. The federal government could be spending even more. So there are some other numbers to keep in mind. other countries that have systems that would be similar to a Medicare for all system, okay, that we have, spend roughly about 11% of GDP, maybe 10% of GDP, even 9% of GDP on their systems. And they cover everybody, and their health care is generally better than ours. Their life expectancy is better than ours. There are no divorces, there are no bankruptcies, there are no mortgage foreclosures, and there are no people dying because they don't have insurance. Whereas we have huge numbers, okay, of people dying. But the important point, okay, to keep your eye on here is that if we look at the GDP of the United States and we say instead of spending 18 or 19% of GDP, soon going up to 20% of GDP, which is what we're spending now, what our $4 trillion is. And we ask ourselves, well, what if we were spending only 11% K of GDP? You would then see that the $2.6 trillion or $2.7 trillion that the federal government is spending right now would cover everything without any money coming out of private pockets at all. Now, whether money would come out of our pockets for taxes that would offset the spending, that's up to Congress. And it's up to us, okay? It's up to pressure that we want to put on it. If we didn't want our Congress to tax anything for the Medicare for All program, they could pay for it without taxing $1. All 2.7 trillion, they could cover the whole thing. Now, that might not be a wise thing to do because it could be inflationary. But the whole point is they don't have to offset the whole of it. In other words, maybe they could perhaps do it for $2.3 trillion offset or $2 trillion offset. But even that is not really the key point. The key point is the $4 trillion we're spending now is in the end coming out of private sector pockets all across the United States, coming out of our pockets, either through premiums, copays, deductibles, taxes, all that stuff. It's coming out of our pockets because they don't run any deficits for healthcare, okay, at this point. So you have to remember, government deficits are private sector surpluses, but they're not running any surpluses for us, for the private sector. They're completely offsetting all the healthcare spending, all $4 trillion. Okay, who's it going to? It's going to the insurance companies, okay, it's going to the providers, it's going to an extractive system that takes all the money and brings it up to the top, takes it out of our pockets, and it brings it up to the oligarchy in the United States. That is what is happening. And what a Medicare for All system is about is cutting the middleman out. That's part of what it's about anyway, is cutting the middleman out and taking that money back and leaving it in the pockets of the people. That's a very, very important element. The other important element, of course, is getting rid of the fatalities and the divorces and the foreclosures and all that stuff. I did some computations on the fatalities from 2010 to 2016, because I was interested in finding out what the Obama administration cost us by deciding not to pass HR 676, which was the version of Medicare for All back then from John Conyers. Okay, but they took that off the table at the start and they started fooling around with the public option, which was all a sham anyway. And they ended up with a bill that wasn't even a public option. It was a bailout for the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies, the Affordable Care Act. Okay, of course. So question, what did the Affordable Care Act cost us in terms of fatalities due to lack of insurance between 2010 and 2016? I estimated that based on some research studies that had been done, it amounted to 356,000 people. That did not even include the fatalities due to the inadequate insurance that many, many people had, because people die from inadequate insurance too, because they can't afford to go to the doctor, or they wait too long, or things like that happen. Okay, so those fatalities are even greater than the fatalities from lack of insurance. One friend of mine who keeps track of this, actually, Jeff Ginter, thinks that it amounts to hundreds of thousands of people per year who die due to lack of adequate insurance. So our healthcare choices have been creating all these problems for people. They're not even properly realized or recognized, okay, or tracked. But it's important to keep in mind the scale of the spending, okay, and also to recognize that, of course, there's plenty of money for Medicare for all, because it would be cheaper to do Medicare for all. We wouldn't be spending $4 trillion anymore per year. We'd be spending 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 trillion dollars. So
it brings me to my next to our next point of talk about why it's staying that way, right? When we've elected enough, squad members to, at least start enacting some of this change and start moving, tactically in that area.
Ruth, I want to really quickly.
Yeah, Indy's coming in, but
Indy's coming in.
I'll push this question to him when he gets here as well.
Right, and I want to ask really quickly. Sabrina, you're in Massachusetts, right? You supposedly have allegedly two of the most progressive senators. How much have they done for you, Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey, in pushing for Medicare for all in the last year?
Nothing. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I do want to tell people it's really interesting. She's actually not as well liked here as people would think. She has just ran against candidates that people dislike more. It's just the fact of the matter. Ed Markey, I'll be honest with you, like, it was the young people that came out and put Ed Markey over in this past election against Joe Kennedy, because Joe Kennedy really didn't have a reason for running. He was just running because he was a Kennedy. It just is what it is in the state. But Ed Markey, he talks about progressive issues, but then he's kind of weird too sometimes, because then he'll vote against those issues. I mean, yes, he was really passionate about Green New Deal, but they were also invited. Ed Markey was invited to the Boston March. His office said that he was not going to be here. Several people were contacted. Ayanna Pressley's office was contacted about the Boston March. Again, her office was like, yeah, she's not going to be here, but it's just all these excuses. And it's really disappointing, because I've seen Ayanna Pressley actually do great things locally when she was a part of city council. She was actually known for pushing back on issues, and she did great things for the city. But once she got into Congress, that all changed. And I know people can say the same thing about the rest of the squad. So there's something about that pressure in Congress that they are just conforming to. I can tell you that Afeni actually met AOC and Cori Bush at the Capitol protests. And Afeni said that, talking to AOC said, look, if you guys want things to change, you have to organize on the outside. That is the only way they are going to listen to you. And by they, she was talking about the government. So that's coming from someone who is already in Congress. She's already telling us that that is the only way they're going to listen to us. So I think that if we would have had more local media support about these marches, I think that would have gotten Congress attention more. I think that would have gotten President Joe Biden's attention more. We should have had larger numbers. We did what we could do, but if local media would have covered it, because we sent out press releases in Boston to all the stations. So one of them showed up earlier on, didn't cover the actual march though, when we started marching. But if we would have had all those other stations respond, this would have been way bigger. I think we had about 100 people, but we could have had more. So we have that working against us too. We have the media working against us. They just don't feel that this is something that they want to pay attention to. But that's unfortunate. But no, Elizabeth Warren is not doing anything. And I really hope that someone will primary challenge her.
When they toss it on us again and say we have to do organizing from the outside, then how do we push the media? How do we push the media to get out there? We have to start embarrassing the media. I mean, we've got our independent channels we're trying to drive the narrative and the attention to this, but there's only so many people that are tuning into YouTube that aren't just watching regular mainstream news and what's shoveled into their ears every night on their cable stations.
I wanted to
We are going to need
introduce.
some solidarity from
before
the
we,
other organizations.
Hold on, Joe.
Before we continue here, I want to add in Indy left to the
Indy
conversation. If you want to quickly introduce yourself, and we're going to add you in. We were just talking about the failure of her Massachusetts senators.
Hey, everybody. Happy to be
Hi,
here.
Andy.
Appreciate
How
you
you
guys
doing?
inviting me into the and appreciate you guys inviting me into the stream. I cover all of you folks and then a whole lot more.
Thank
I
you.
am a news aggregator. Yeah, my pleasure. IndieLeft.news, Leftist.today are my two publications that I put out twice a day that updates with all the different content that everyone in Leftist is putting out independently. Ready to talk Medicare for all. Let's do it.
Right.
You know, someone in the live chat, E. Heller, is a very good point. AOC has millions of social media followers. Why doesn't she mobilize them? It's just platitudes. It's just BS. I have to, edit myself here. I don't want to swear, but that's all it is. They throw it back on us and we're doing everything we possibly can. So it's all about how do we organize, do the pushback to the media, the pushback to her, the squad. They just keep dropping the ball and passing it on to us. And do you know what got our elected officials scared? Was the Capitol insurrection early this January.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
That got them to pay attention to things. Now, I'm certainly not suggesting that's what we have to do, but isn't it interesting? Suddenly, that's when they start putting laws into action when they're worried for themselves. And I just wonder, what can we do to get that level of fear from Congress to realize they're supposed to do a job for us, and they're not doing it when they keep tossing it back down to us. Well, you need to organize more. And then we realize, well, that's all about the media covering all this to get them to do their jobs that we elected them to do.
If I can
Kid,
add
I
a
see
little
you motioning there.
I
Go ahead,
am
Kit.
about it. I don't want to be, but it gets very frustrating because it's just circular all the time.
Mhm.
Look, I
Right,
want to add a
okay,
little
it's
bit on.
circular all the time, but to do something about the circular nature of the whole thing, to get to the media to actually start to cover this,
Mhm.
we need to have a lot more solidarity from the private organizations. In other words, where was PNHP in this march? Why weren't they totally supporting it? Healthcare Now, why weren't they totally supporting it? Why weren't the unions totally supporting it? I mean, where the hell were the unions?
We had a big roster of support here in Chicago, though.
Answering my own question. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kit, you
I
wanted to
see
say
Kit
something?
motioning there. Want to say something? So,
Louder for the
Look,
people in
I
the
want
back.
to add to what Jerry's been saying, especially in regards towards making sure these politicians hear us. Well, what needs to be done is, again, we see how scared they were after January 6th, but the result of that is this massive wave of censorship. So already social media is working against us. However, which way we can in private chats, we have to have these continuous organizations and talks about how we can actually lay pressure on these politicians. And one of the things that has to be done is protest in front of their homes, protest in front of their offices, under some of
Embarrass
these
them.
houses. Make sure that they're not comfortable because they have gold-plated health care. And then add to the other part, how come there isn't any solidarity amongst the left? Look, I have no idea how to unite the left. I don't know what that conversation is. We've seen people try and quote-unquote unite the left, but all it seems to be is tone policing and preparing people to fall in line for the next election. People don't have time to be pandered to. People don't have time to vote for a Democratic Party that won't deliver with their promises. So far, corporate media and the Democratic establishment and all these cul-de-sac progressives and liberals who, again, tone police and carry water for the DNC, they've successfully told people that, oh no, we have to vote Democrat because it's our only option. And they've done a pretty fair job, a hit job towards third parties that could possibly deliver, and also saying, well, we can't be mean to these politicians because they're the best we have. If they're the best we have and they're still willing to have Nancy Pelosi elected in as Speaker of the House at the height of pandemic and not deliver, or even that put force to vote for Medicare for all on the House floor, okay, let's say the force to vote the Medicare for all bill was put on the floor, and let's say it would probably fail, okay, and it probably would. It would shine a light on Republican and Democratic lawmakers that are saying no to their constituents for not having Medicare for all. Think about what kind of political ammunition those 15 congressmen and women who are on the force of vote petition, what they could do, what they could use with that, and rally their supporters. There are millions and millions of supporters saying, help us vote these bastards out. It's Democrat and Republican, the pragmatic moderates, and the GOP. They're all friends with each other. Those 15 congressmen and women who are on the force of vote petition can be a voting bloc. They can do the damage like we see from Manchin and Sinema. They can do things. But the fact that they're saying, oh no, we can't do this. Oh, we have to work with the system. Working with the system gets you more of the same. Working with the system still says that you're okay with people dying or being out in the streets or losing everything that they've worked for.
And everybody knows that was the strategy behind Force the Vote. Make no mistake about it. The strategy was to expose those that are working against us. And you know why I get emotional about this? I'm disabled and I have Medicare. So I really have no dog in this fight, other than when I hear other people don't have health care coverage, my heart goes out to them because I know Medicare works as a recipient, as a permanently disabled American citizen. That's why I spoke at the Chicago rally. As someone who's receiving it knows how it works.
And you know what? Force the Vote had to begin a process that hasn't begun yet. Floor has to happen. And yeah, it's probably going to fail, but it's got to happen in order for it to fail so that we can have the next one and push for the next one and explain that we've got 100 and we can build 150 and 200 and 218 is what we need, I believe, at least right now. It's probably not going to happen in this session, realistically.
So let's try to figure out the
all of a sudden,
timeline.
Yeah, Indy's signal is a little.
To say otherwise. Cut now.
Yeah, I was going to say,
sorry about that.
I was going to say in reference to like uniting the left, part of the problem is that some of these leftists have relationships with some of these politicians. Like they had relationships with them when they were running and then when they won, like people on the squad. And so that like by itself is going to leave room for bias. And this is what I told people like after Biden won, be careful and watch for this because now all the money is going to be in the center. It's not going to be on the left. It's not going to be on the right. It's going to be in the center. And that's why you see some of these people moving further and further towards the center because that's where the money is. So in a sense, they too have sold us out. It's not just the squad. They have to take responsibility for this as well. And so for me, that's why I'm glad I don't have relationships with any of those politicians because I can just speak openly and candidly about it. But when you have that relationship and you want to keep that access to people in Congress, that is troublesome. And the message that you send across to people, it is the wrong message. And we need everybody in this country to have healthcare. It's not about your friendship and your access to Congress. That does not help the rest of the people in this country have healthcare. It is selfish and it is wrong. And I just want to make that very clear. I don't care like how popular you are. I don't care how large your platform is. If you are preaching that rhetoric, it is wrong.
Yeah. Also add a little bit more.
So that brings us back to the direct action, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, if I can add a little bit to what Sabrina said too. Because when we talk about interviewing these politicians or having them on our respective shows here and there, what we have to acknowledge is that, okay, there might be a candidate or an elected official that you agree with, that you respect. But none of these politicians, even if they're third party, deserve any form of hero worship. Nor do they deserve any of these wonderful benefits that they have. They are public servants. Now, the thing is, what we have to do is, especially for all these progressives running for office, is hold them accountable, make them uncomfortable. Because if they don't deliver, then you have to put them in their place. And the one thing that I've been doing, especially getting ready for this midterm election cycle, is saying to any candidate that comes on Heartlands Media, specifically, or even on Chicago Corner, because we will have a municipal election in 2023. The one thing I'm going to say to these candidates is, what are you prepared to put at risk for your political career for a one term? Are you prepared to do a force to vote should it come up? Are you prepared to put everything on the line to be a one term person and lose any kind of allegiance or platform building in Washington, D.C.
Isn't that what AOC ran on? She said that. Wasn't I think I recall she made that point specifically that even if
Something
you're
about
only
the
there one
ruckus.
term. Yeah, even if you're there one term and you get something done, that's what's important. Doesn't seem to matter to her
I've
anymore.
heard that from a few politicians I've talked to.
Here's
You
the something I want to throw into the mix of the conversation. The Justice Democrats, I think Kyle recognized one of the criticisms he had of himself and then creating that organization is something he said is they did not bet for leadership in these candidates that they put up there. So something that they did not do is vet AOC's leadership. She was great on the issues, but clearly she doesn't have any leadership skills.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
she
She created a cult of personality.
I wanted to ask Indy, because of his particular expertise in this, about, he's got eyes everywhere. And I wanted to ask you, Kit talked about censorship earlier. Did you see this direct action be censored at all? Like, and what your thoughts on that was?
I saw heavy suppression, definitely on the hashtag M for All. I don't think that, it took a hard time to have it trending or showing up anywhere on Twitter for the hashtag. And there were a ton of people that were certainly tweeting with it. Definitely the view counts on the videos were down and a little bit lower than we would have seen if there were any other nationwide rally and protests that were coordinated across the country. And again, like Sabby said, the lack of corporate media, and then again, the lack of even the so-called, the progressive, whatever you want to call them, or so-called progressive media,
The shit libs
crapped all over it.
Yep.
and said that it had right wingers involved and it had anti-vaxxers involved. It had all kinds of people that weren't actually involved, that had legitimate questions, that certainly everybody was there for Medicare for all and coming together for that. And that was the whole idea. But that is an inconvenience to some people, including some of the people that were protesting on Capitol Hill, quote unquote. They were having a sit-in that was approved by Nancy Pelosi, that was approved by the Capitol Police, and they cleared everybody away the minute that the invited, that the invitees or the inviters were no longer there.
It's all show. It's all show for them.
Right. So the question is, what do we do now?
That is
so
the question.
Kit suggested, actually, way back at the beginning, he began to talk about the direct action. He got somehow diverted from that into all kinds of other things. But it does seem to me that if we're going to advance anything with respect to Medicare for all, it's got to be through direct action, okay, of various kinds. Not simply marches. They don't go very far.
I suggest handing
Yes,
out balloon
but they
animal
attract-
guillotines.
No,
Congress.
and additionally, torches, pitchforks, guillotines.
Sure.
Anybody
yeah.
been paying attention to what's been going on in the UK? They've had a trucker strike.
Also, in
So
France-
E. Heller was sharing in the live chat that they use manure trucks to
That's
get
what it was. That was in
government
France,
officials to do
right?
things. Yeah.
Or was
Yeah,
that-
that probably got
That was in
attention.
France.
Yeah, they
That probably got
sprayed
their
the,
attention.
the law, the halls of law with animal shit, which
And obviously, we're not advocating for that because that would probably be a criminal
No,
offense. But
we
what,
would
but
never.
what can we do that's going to get that kind of attention if
Right.
that's the only thing that seems to work in other countries?
First thing you got to do is raise enough money to be able to support a strike like that.
Yep, I agree.
Right.
I mean,
So
you
we
gotta be
need a
able to support
mutual
those
aid
people.
fund.
You've got to
Um,
build a fund and a structure of an organization that can react to that.
Mutual aid fund with a lot of money.
Yep.
So why don't we form a corporation for the citizens of the United States of America? So we can pool all the money, create a corporation, and pay lobbyists. Basically, use the same strategy that corporations use to buy our elected officials. Maybe that's what we need to do to buy our elected officials back to act on our behalf. That sounds really crazy, but when you think about what are the strategies that the big companies are using against us, is there any way we can adopt those strategies for ourselves? When you talk about it's going to take a lot of money for us to be able to organize to do this stuff, is that far-fetched to see if we could actually create some kind of a business entity for the citizens of the United States of America to have
Uh-huh.
lobbyists and lawyers to do that stuff for us?
The Hardlands Media Mug Incorporated lobbying group. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
I don't know, Kit.
That sounds like a good idea, but the thing is, to create a nationwide general strike or real movement for Medicare for all and other progressive issues that need to be addressed, we're going to have to, it's going to have to be trial and error. We're going to have to see a lot of groups do things individually. And it just can't be this one monolith of unite the left, because again, I know I can't think of any solution to really unite all the different factions of the left. I have no idea how to do that. And it's going to be a tough and difficult thing to do. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what a united left looks like, especially if that united left is going to be carrying water for the Democratic establishment. So I just want to add in my final notes for this, because I will have to be leaving. And I do apologize to everyone for my departure. But here's the thing. We need more people like Sabrina, like Independent Left, like people like Fred Hampton Leftists, Mikasu Casa, Jimmy Dore, Lee Camp, everyone. I'm going to include everyone because I know there's Twitter beefs here and there, but we have to look at the bigger picture. In the United States, the richest country in the world, we spent trillions of dollars for a 20-year war that led to nothing. We had the money to take care of the people then, and I know for a fact that we can still get the money to take care of us now. What we're going to have to do is it's going to have to be individuals. We're going to have to, again, hold these politicians' feet to the fire at different states, in different cities, and it's going to have to be continuous and ongoing. And I'm in full support in however which way we can get Medicare for all, be it through another force to vote for Medicare for all, like what Jimmy Dore, Brianna Joy Gray, Justin Jackson, Dr. Cornel West did, and so many others did for that live stream that had 100,000 plus people tune in. Continuous march for Medicare for all, or either that, what whole Washington is doing, or even the New York Healthcare Act as well that's happening in the state of New York. However which way we're going to do it, all of them together or individually, we need to show full support and solidarity for Medicare for all. This will not be an easy fight, because the problem is these politicians are bought and owned by big pharma and the health insurance industry. And we cannot afford to be pandered. We cannot afford to be like, okay, maybe the Democrats will deliver in 20 years or 30 years. We don't have time to wait.
We're past that.
We are past that point of waiting. And the thing is, there's a lot of communities that, again, nationwide are struggling day in, day out, where losing a loved one from a treatable disease is every day. It's an everyday situation that is all too familiar. And occasionally on my live stream show, or when we clip the show on Hardlands Media, we get people from overseas saying, how come you Americans put up with this? I thought you guys were tough. This wouldn't fly in our country. Why do you worship your politicians? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And you would think at some point, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, like this would get under our skin as Americans, because what is happening is the rest of the world is watching us. And they're seeing the American people say, well, I guess the American people like to get slapped around. I guess the American people are okay with this when we're not okay with this. We never have been okay with this. And we can't afford to carry water for the DNC. And I know that might offend people or get people upset that, oh no, then the GOP gets into power. I know what to expect from the Republican Party. But what angers me is when the Democrats, who say that they're better, fail to deliver, constantly compromise, and don't give us anything back in return. If we're going to fight for that better future, we all have to step up individually and, yes, show solidarity. And you may not like the tone of how certain leftists handle certain politicians, but the thing is, people have every right to be angry, and they're entitled to be angry.
They do.
They're entitled to yell and scream and push back.
But it's the corporate influence in the country, Kit. That's the problem. When other countries look at the U.S. and they can't understand why we tolerate this, we don't tolerate this. This is the corporate states of America, not the United States of America for the citizens. And I don't know how much influence corporations have in other countries, not as much as they do here. And this has to do with our corrupt officials. I mean, there's just so many multiple layers to what do we do? Right.
So with that being said, I want to thank all of you for joining us here at KRTD Media. I'm going to have to be leaving. You guys are awesome. Shout out to Sabrina, who was a guest on our show. Shout out to Jerry, who's doing a fantastic job for Chicago Corner.
Thank you.
And shout out to Reef, my main man right there. Shout out to you, man. Joe, it was great being on your show. And Indy Left, you're doing a fantastic job too. Shane, thanks for having me on.
Sure. Kid, I just want to say one thing in response to what you said to the Democrats and the Republicans. It just reminds me of the phrase, the Democrats will stab you in the back and the
Mhm.
Republicans will stab you in the front.
Front.
You're getting stabbed either way.
They're both really bad things. They're both really
Bye,
bad
kid.
things.
Have a
All
good
right,
night.
take care, everyone.
Shout out to
Take it easy.
Hardland.
Good night, kid.
So I want to
I
get
think
back
it brings
to
up the whole thing, which is part of the argument on the left right now, is the electoral politics versus, direct action. I want to get, everyone's takes on why they think that electoral politics isn't working or is working. But yeah, Joe, you want to go first?
Sure. Okay, so we all know it's not working. It doesn't work at all, right?
Right.
So we have a system where the president of the United States, who's a Democrat, and whose people, that is the primary voters in his party, 88% of them want to have a Medicare for all bill. And he says, if that bill crosses my desk, I'm going to veto it. And yet he can still stay as the head of a Democratic Party. That means the Democratic Party is an oligarchy. It doesn't pay attention to the people who support it. It also means that probably if the people who support it had somewhere else to go, they would probably go to that somewhere else if we could somehow get into a situation where we could convince the people that somebody representing someone else or some party coming up had some chance to actually win the election. Okay, Green Party people say one of the most important things we could have in terms of change is ranked choice voting.
Yep.
That is probably something that could help the situation. But that's also a more long-term thing because we have to have it everywhere. And it's only in a very few places now. Okay, so we have to hit on some things that can make things happen very quickly. And so again, I come back to direct action kinds of things. Economic boycotts, those are important. Rolling strikes could be important. Having the mutual aid fund, yes, I think that is important. I think the idea of having a corporate structure for it is also important, but it's got to be a nonprofit that corporate structure.
Yep.
And it has to be run by a board that is absolutely unimpeachable from a moral point of view.
I would also
We
like
have to
add,
have people like the Reverend Barber on that
Mhm.
board. Cornel West has to be on that board.
Brother Cornell can be on
We
whatever
have to
board.
have people who are
Every
moral leaders for our whole country that other people trust. Will never get corrupt, will use the money in the right way, will oversee the way the money is getting used, and will only use it to support people who are putting their bodies on the line or their jobs on the line or other valuable things for that. So I think we have to set up that kind of organization and we have to start to move in that sort of way.
so I want to go
individual direct action, like Jerry, I think it was in Chicago recently, right, where the man was on top of the school building, right? Was that?
Oh,
was that you?
Jamal Green, yeah.
You
And of
said
course,
it.
the mayor had him pulled down under
Dark
at
of
darkness at night.
Yeah.
Dark of night is when they sent the police in helicopters to get he was a former mayoral candidate, Jamal Green. We've had him on the show several times on Chicago Corner to talk about this initiative. He's been trying to raise money on the South Side, and the building that he was camped out on was an empty school building that he and his group have simply been asking the city to relinquish that property so that they can privately fund and build a youth center here in Chicago to benefit the underprivileged kids in that community.
Yeah, I mean, I think things like that. I know, I think it was the Sunrise Movement who would. I think I saw one of them at one point just had a ticket for a plane flight and just got on top of the plane, just climbed right up as they were letting people through the door, and now you have a guy stuck on top of your plane for an indefinite amount of time. I think these individual actions as well as group actions can play a big part. When politics right now is a reality game show, we need those people that can get the attention of that camera, right? And to get in there and voice their opinions and get their the ladies who take down flags and stuff, at I think it was Georgia or Mississippi, taking down their state Confederate flag, doing that kind of stuff. I think that's all. That kind of direct action is more needed now than ever, in my opinion. I wanted to push it to Sabs and see what she thought on these issues.
Yeah, definitely. Direct action is the way to go. And one of the things I did notice on that October 15th general strike, they listed their demands.
Yeah.
And some of the demands were $15 minimum wage, $20 minimum wage. I actually think it should be higher.
Yeah.
Universal health care for everybody, paid paternity and maternity leave that we don't even have in this country guaranteed to people. So when people say, no, we have to do it through electoral politics, that's actually not true. We can get some of these demands met through a general strike. Because I tell this to people time and time again, it's not the government that runs the country, it's corporations, because corporations run the government. So you have to hit the corporations. So I know some people cannot afford to quit their job because they need their health insurance. And this is kind of how they keep us tied in. But what some of us can do is we can protest or we can strike in a different way. For example, if you have an Amazon Prime membership, cancel it. Think about all the money that Jeff Bezos and Amazon makes over those Prime memberships, those Prime subscriptions alone. It's things like that. If you can do so, don't shop at Walmart. It's Amazon, Walmart. You even have to be careful with Samsung, because Samsung is also a part of the military industrial complex. It's things like this. Like, you have to hit the corporations. And that is going to be something that is not easy to do, because just typically in this country, we are so consumer driven. That's kind of the nature of being American in this country. So we're going to have to change our way of life, which isn't going to be easy. You need to stock up on food, supplies, just like people did at the start of COVID. When everybody panicked and they were like, let me get all the toilet paper. You need to stock up on those things. And we have to, this is how we're going to fight back at the corporations. But if you don't hit the corporations, we will continue this circle. We will continue this fight, because Joe Biden already told you he's not going to let these things come through. And I'm just thinking about all the people that are going to be evicted after these 60 days are up, all the people that are going to have to start paying back their student loan debt come January. It's just, we have to do it direct action. I don't have time to wait for someone else to get into office.
I mean, you've even got September 4th coming. September 4th, we've got the end of the unemployment extension, and that is going to affect a lot of people, and definitely concerned about that as well. And Congress, I know that the House is back in session this week. However, I don't believe that the Senate is back until after Labor Day, so they're letting that expire without a bill being passed.
Of course they are.
Luckily, they
Right.
get a vacation.
So I was
Cowards.
I was never force the vote for Medicare for all. The reason why I wasn't was because the squad had the numbers, just the sheer numbers, to force the vote to replace Nancy Pelosi on January 3rd. And the big question that I had is why they didn't do that. And when I imagine the costs of that, all the actions that Nancy Pelosi has taken since that time, to block the progressive in Congress, could have been avoided. Sabby pointed out that she got, on Richie Neal's back to stop the Medicare for All bill from getting out of the committee. And she did do that. But it wasn't only her, because Richie Neal has taken more money from pharma and more money from the providers and from insurance donors. I believe he's the #1 recipient of those funds. So he's been sitting there in the Ways and Means committees for all these years to actually block any action on Medicare for all. Alex Morse came close to defeating him last year, only stopped him with smears, on Alex Morse. I hope Alex Morse, is going to run against him, in another 2 years. But the overall point here is that if Nancy Pelosi had been defeated by the squad and simply denied the chair, then the squad could have made a deal with someone more to the left, okay, than Nancy Pelosi. Let's say, for example, Debbie Dingell. What would have happened if Debbie Dingell would have become the Speaker of the House? She has a family obligation to pass the Medicare for All bill. Her husband, for many years, her father-in-law, were trying to pass Medicare for All for years and years and years. What would have happened if she could have become the Speaker of the House?
I mean, the
I
squad
think things would have been
wouldn't
very,
do the
very
first-
different today.
the squad wouldn't even do the
Right.
first step in that department. of
Absolutely.
holding
I
the
want to
vote,
go to
right?
Indy really quick. Indy, you had worked a little bit with Joe on that replace Pelosi campaign. Is there anything you think that you learned from that? Anything that you took away from that when you did that?
Yeah, my takeaway is that they don't have the courage to fight the establishment. They don't have the courage to fight MSNBC. They don't have the courage to be hated. And it's sad and it's unfortunate because that's exactly what we sent them there to do. They're not going to fight leadership. So now that we know that, okay, now that we know that they can get a performative action potentially to show up and get some things done, how do we get them to do more performative actions then for us so that we can get some more things done? Like, Jimmy said that in Chicago. What would have happened if they stayed on the steps for 5 more days?
For 5 more days.
Maybe we would have gotten this. And you know what? We've got to try to get them back out for 5 more days. Let's call it the 5 more day campaign. That's an idea.
Nancy's ice cream
That's
parties.
at least starting to, instead of just standing
right.
here
And I
talking
think
about what
another
was
thing
and
that we
complaining.
need to realize is that there is a motion in Congress. It's called the vacate the chair motion that can be run, against the Speaker of the House. Now, in running such a motion, it cannot possibly be successful, unless it's a privilege motion. It can't be a privilege motion, unless it is raised on behalf of a party caucus, or a party conference. Guess what? The Congressional Progressive Caucus, that is an official party caucus. It has a budget in the Congress, which is actually provided to it. So if we could get the CPC en masse to sponsor a vacate the chair motion, CPC also has enough votes to remove Nancy Pelosi from the speakership, stop her, from getting it again. So if we could devise a political campaign to get that done, maybe you could change something inside the House, but for a fairly brief time. If we could do something like that, there's another thing we might be able to get done, and that is pass a new campaign finance law, which uses Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution to deal the Supreme Court out. By dealing the Supreme Court out, I mean the Congress has control of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in Article 3, Section 2. It can write a variation of the exceptions clause of the Constitution that simply prohibits the Supreme Court from actually reviewing the legislation. So Congress, in theory at least, could pass a campaign finance bill that the Supreme Court would not be able to review. So that campaign finance bill would stand, and it could eliminate all corporate contributions. It could eliminate contributions from all people, let's say, who make more than $1 million, something like that. Cut them out of the donor process completely. That would really change politics.
It would, but we're talking about something that's so long-term when we talk about what if. I'm of the opinion that the current parties in place, especially the Democrats, they're useless. I think that so much of this depends on a third party. I think so much right now to get anything moving fast goes back earlier to something you were talking about, Joe, possible solutions and ways forward. I really am of the opinion right now, so much is going to depend on a third party, mobilizing people into a third party that's going to challenge the two parties. I don't care that the two parties keep saying this is a two-party system, a third party is only going to spoil things. You can't spoil it any more than it's already spoiled right now.
I agree.
And I do think that a lot is going to be dependent on us supporting. I mean, I'm looking at the People's Party movement right now that started in California and is spreading nationwide, because when you talk about the what ifs of if we do this, the CPC, that's all such long-term stuff. The house is on the house is on fire right now, and we can't wait that long until it's burned down.
But do agree that we need something short term, okay, and not long term.
Yeah.
But,
All it takes is
what's
Biden
your
to
time
sign a piece
schedule?
of paper. That's all
But
it
he
takes.
won't.
He won't.
He said he won't. He
Now,
won't do it.
I think it would be a much easier thing to influence his opinion through direct action than eventually they can't ignore you.
That's a nice thought, but did you see the video of that disabled activist 80 who interviewed him during the election? Right. I think, Mr. Joe. Yeah. I think that that I'm a strong advocate of Medicare for all. Joe Biden. I'm not.
Shut up, fat.
He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit. He is so completely contemptuous of anybody that would challenge his decision on this.
I want to pose a question here.
Right.
I want to pose a question here to all of you here in the panel. So a third party is an interesting idea. Now, I don't want to sound bad saying this. The People's Party does not have ballot access right now. The Green Party is a dying party. Not to be that they die. They also don't have a lot of ballot access. They got a couple of seats in California, things like that. But how long does it take before the People's Party or the Green Party or the Socialist Party of America or any of these guys can get a majority in even one city? We have an exception in Vermont with a couple of Vermont Progressive Party guys getting up there and getting elected, but that's one small state. What do we do in the other 49 states?
I personally don't even think you need a majority there, right? The whole point of the Justice Democrats was to have a Tea Party style Democrat in office. Well, the Tea Party had a thing that Justice Democrats didn't. The Tea Party, right? The reason why they were worried about it is because the Tea Party were running people and getting elected.
Look at how much the Tea Party got done too. If we could organize successfully like that, that's what we need to do. Not be like the Tea Party. Use their strategy.
Use their strategy.
Right. Okay.
They had
so
the threat of a third party.
How long is it going to take for a third party, something like the Tea Party, or something like the Green Party or the People's Party? How long is it going to take for them to get even 20 seats in Congress?
You need to get 5% of the vote, so that you have to have either party cater to you.
I think
5% of the vote gets you.
I think it would be faster. I think it would be faster than some of these other solutions we're talking about.
So, Indy, I want to expand on that a little bit.
Right, but I want you to think about the actual time schedule and whether we have that time. For example, if you think it would take 3 years to get the 20 Congress people elected, do we have that 3 years? Can we wait?
Right. So I want to, since we don't, I want to go to Indy's point. Indy, you had mentioned getting 5% of the vote there. What is your, do you want to expand a little bit on what you think that would mean if, let's say, for example, the Greens got 5% of the vote? What does that mean?
Correct. What that would mean is that the Democrats then have to cater to the Green Party base, essentially, if they want to take a majority and defeat the Republicans, or they're guaranteed defeat. That puts the Greens and the left in a leveraged position.
It depends upon how the 5% of the vote is distributed, in the country.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
the other thing they get
about getting something, but
that's true. The other thing they get is matching federal funds, which helps them as a party as well. Everybody forgets that part.
Right, but again, we don't have the 3 years.
No.
The key is finding the inspirational Green candidate that actually brings people together and is a big enough name that would get people to cross party lines or independents or the unaffected voter to actually want to come out and vote for somebody who they wouldn't normally vote for.
Yeah. Okay, so who is that candidate? Is it Marianne Williamson?
Not
can-
lately. Not
she can-
lately.
I would say no. I wouldn't say anybody that's in the political sphere, to be honest
anyone
with
in
you.
political
Honestly,
space.
the only person that I would say right now that could do it is Dwayne Johnson. He's the only person that could cross over right now and pull everybody.
I'd be
Yeah,
more
it
than
has to
willing
be
give up.
someone that's really influential. And I want to remind everyone that at one point during the election, Jill Stein actually had 7%. And then
Yeah.
the media started to attack her and say she's a Russian asset and all of those smears. But it can be done, but it has to be someone who has enough name recognition, someone that has a great social media presence. Because that was the thing with the Green Party. They don't advertise well. So it has to be someone who is huge.
I
Cornell
think Dwayne
West for
Johnson's
the
a
People's
fantastic.
Party. I'm down.
Dwayne Johnson's a fantastic idea.
I mean, we can at least.
Well,
smell
yeah,
the
Arnold
rock.
Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, everybody knows of him as a Republican. He seems, but Arnold, he seems much more left-leaning these days. I mean, honestly, the guy's got such an amazing social media following. He's telling people to get vaccinated. I mean, people listen to people that are speaking sense. And if it might be some of these celebrities, like whether it's Dwayne Johnson or someone like Schwarzenegger, whose politics I've disagreed with in the past, but he seems to have come around more.
Well, here's the thing: the Greens.
He can't
were
run. He wasn't
offered-
born here. He
That's
Yeah, I
can't
know.
run. He wasn't
We're
born
not
here.
talking about president. We're talking. Yeah, I know.
That's true. And
Yeah.
if we forget, there was a time where Ventura wasn't going to be able to do it in the end, all
Yes.
the things, but he actually polled when he said, I may run with the Greens. They did a national poll, and he polled at 15%. If he can poll at 15%, he gets into the debates, and then maybe somebody who gets it, if you get into the debates, maybe you can get 5% of the vote. In Maine, Lisa Savage ran independent. She ran with the Greens under their banner, rather. She was independent, but she got into the debates twice. They were afraid of her. They changed the rules in the middle of the debate in order to stop her from getting into the last few
They
debates.
did. They
Yep.
did.
So
Yeah,
imagine if you had
if these third parties could attract someone with that kind of visibility, that's your fast track right there.
Yep.
Because we are a celebrity driven culture, but at least if it's a celebrity that speaks sense and isn't, some maniac like what you need someone who can do what Donald Trump did, but who's not a deranged maniac like Donald Trump is what you need.
I wanted to start wrapping up here and get people's closing statements on these issues. Sabby, what's your thoughts on these takes? Just give your closing arguments.
Absolutely. Guys, we have to move forward to direct action. At this point, it just has to happen. I've put links on my channel for the October 15th general strike. I will be talking about that more and more each episode as we get closer and closer into October, but we have to start demanding these things. When I talked to Professor Wolf, he said he doesn't understand when he talks to people in France, because his family is originally from France. They said to him, I don't understand how Americans tolerate this. I don't understand why they put up with this. If this was happening to people in France, we would be out in the streets in the thousands. And if that's what it's going to take, that's what we have to do. We can't just give up and just, give in to the duopoly, because that's what they expect us to do. So my response to everyone is we have to do direct action. We need to start donating more to mutual aid. If you go to Mutual Aid Hub, you can find mutual aids in your area. Even if you think there aren't any, you might be surprised when you look at that map and see how many are out there. So definitely start with direct action and donate to mutual aid as much as you can.
Okay. Andy, you want to give your closing?
Yeah, people need help right now. All these solutions that we're talking about that are for down the road are wonderful, but what are we going to do to actually help people right now? And this situation is desperate for millions of people across the country. I think that a lot of people are downplaying how severe it is. I totally am with Sabby as far as mutual aid. I have a channel inside my Discord just for people to be able to post some mutual aid. So if someone's looking to do some good, there are links for people that actually do need some help now. And as I find some people that are looking for mutual aid on Twitter, I grab a link and I pop that in there as well.
If someone
Wildcat
wants to join
strikes,
your
general
Discord,
strikes, trucker strikes, anything we can do to impede the big money for the big and powerful interests is really the only way that we're going to affect change. And we need to do it now. And I'm all behind it. IndieLeft.news, Leftist.today, reach out to me. And I'm happy to help.
Oh,
Jerry?
Indy, if somebody wants to join your Discord really quickly and see those, how do they do that?
Yeah, that's at independentleft.gg.
Great. Jerry?
Well, I think the example that Joe had brought up earlier with figuring out how we can organize some kind of a nonprofit group nationwide with people on a trusted board like Dr. Cornell West to represent the interests of all of us in all of these pressing issues, whether it comes to Medicare for all, whether it comes to housing the homeless, just getting direct action, as Sabby said. I just think, as I said earlier, I think so much is dependent on us figuring out how to create traction and momentum in a new way that neither party is serving right now, whether that's a third party or that organization. I mean, sometimes I'm at a loss, guys. I think everybody's ideas here are great. Just like, how do we implement action? Because like I said earlier, the house is on fire right now. It's burning down. Long-term solutions aren't working. We have to figure out how to position people and organizations in place right now. And if it comes down to scaring them, embarrassing them, keeping the light on them, as we all are with all of our channels, as we're screaming from the rooftops about this all the time and sharing what's going on to get more people to pay attention to what's going on. I mean, that's how I feel I contribute by, hosting the channel on Chicago Corner, covering what we do all the time, as well as Hardlands Media.
Yep.
And now we're gonna let
Chicago Corner's trying to get to how close are you to 1,000, Jerry?
I think we've got 870 subscribers right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we're not too far.
Sub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're not too far from 1,000. We're on Twitter at Chicago_Corner. And we also are promoting the show on our Facebook social media feeds. And you can find us on YouTube at Chicago Corner. We broadcast, we live stream Tuesday nights and Fridays, and occasionally we'll have special guests on with unscheduled broadcasts that pop in throughout the week.
Wonderful. So, Joe, we're gonna let you go ahead with your final statement, and then since you didn't do your show tonight, Joe, and you did this instead, I know your people are waiting for you to read. We're gonna allow you to read the chat at the end for a few minutes, so we're gonna keep it open. Okay.
Real quick, Sabs,
Okay.
where can they find you? Real quick.
Right.
Oh, yes, definitely. You can find me on YouTube. My channel name is Sabby Sabs. You can also find me on Rockfin under the same name, and on Twitter at Sabby Sabs 2.
Cool. Joe?
I wanted to say that I agree completely with the direct action idea, with the idea of having a corporate structure, and with the idea, of having, a mutual aid effort, a very large one, and vigorous one, in order to facilitate strikes and actions of various kinds. However, the topic of this meeting here specifically was in relation to Medicare for all. What could we do? And where do we go? And I have to say that, I think part of that could be to fight on all fronts by using whatever methods we have available to us to pressure for Medicare for all. And I think that includes pressuring at all levels of government for either Medicare for all, which is the national effort, or single payer, which is the state level effort. I don't agree with those who think that single payer at the state level, is a distraction. I think single payer at the state level, is a movement builder.
Could lead the way.
Yes. I think it can be very important movement build in terms of the momentum. Not even so much because of the momentum it generates in states where it's successful, but because of the momentum in those states where it is not successful, but where the people want a Medicare for all bill. Because when it's not successful in states, then people have to turn to their senators. They have to begin to pressure their senators for Medicare for all. If they look at California, let's say, California has a single payer bill and it's working, in California. and people in Alabama see this, Mississippi see this. They'll never get to the legislatures of those states to pass it. But they can make an awful ruckus in terms of their senators to strengthen the movement for a national Medicare for All bill. Okay, so I think one of the tools to get a bill is to have some of the state level efforts succeed. And it's not just state by state. It can be in regions too. For example, if Washington gets it first, California sees that and it quickly gets that. How long is it, okay, until the state of Oregon joins up? It's going to be pretty quick. And then the states together can go to the providers, okay, and can go to big pharma, and they can negotiate better prices from them. So they lower the costs in those states. And once the West Coast states have it, how long is it going to be before others join the coalition, like Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Hawaii? Yeah, there are states that will stay out of that coalition, but there could be a solid front of single payer states from Washington on down to the south to Arizona, New Mexico, and up to Colorado. And while this is going on, isn't this going to motivate a regional coalition in the East, specifically with respect to New York? They have the Health Care Act that people want to pass. Cuomo was the big stumbling block, and he is now out of the way. There are news articles already starting to appear that it may be possible to pass that act in New York. Then what happens to New Jersey? Then what happens to Pennsylvania? There are single payer movements in those states. There are single payer movements in Massachusetts. There could very well be a regional coalition in the whole of New England, down the Atlantic coast, as far as Virginia, in just a few years. There's 73 million people in those states to organize into a single payer coalition. In the West Coast states I talked about, the Southwestern states I talked about, there's 71 million people in those states. In the North Central states, in Minnesota, okay, in Illinois, there are movements for single payer also. So you could get those. And by the way, that's not going to cost any money. They've done some cost estimates, okay, in Washington. But Jerry Friedman, okay, has done those estimates for them. Those cost estimates show that the state will save money if single payer passes. The individual people will save money if it passes. The businesses will save money if it passes. All the major interests will save money if it passes. Okay, except of course for big pharma, for the providers and the donors. Okay, but basically there can be very, very heavy popular support for it in all those states, and people are going to spend less and keep a greater amount of money in their pockets.
Joe,
so
where
I
can
think
they
it's
find
possible to organize movements. Huh?
Joe? Where can they find your channel so that they can hear more of you?
Okay, so my channel, the YouTube channel is at Joseph the Firestone. There's Joseph Space the Firestone. I've had that for a long time, before it was in fashion to think up sexy names. And then the Facebook channel is actually Let's Get It Done Joe.
Cool.
Okay, so it's at that. Okay, and on Twitter, I'm at Joe Firestone, the PhD.
I think it's Joseph Firestone, PhD.
Joseph Firestone.
No, I'm a Joe Firestone, PhD.
We'll put it in chat. At Reef Breland on Twitter, if you want to find me. And follow at KRTD on all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. KRTD's on all those, on at KRTD Media.
Can I also add, although I passed along my social media links for Chicago Corner. People can also find me more direct on Twitter at Nightstar Pro, NITESTAR Pro, short for Nightstar Productions. That's my other entity, production company.
Perfect. I want to thank
Great.
everyone for coming
Thank you.
today. I want to thank you guys for sitting through the hour and a half that we just did. But I appreciate everyone in the chat coming. Make sure to hit that
Thanks,
like
everyone.
button, subscribe, and I think that's KRTD out. Goodbye,
All
everyone.
right,
Thanks, everyone.
Joe's,
Hey, very
Joe's
nice.
going to do his comments
Sabby.
now. See everybody.
oh yeah,
Very
Joe's
nice
gonna
to
do the
meet you,
comments
Jerry.
now, Reeve, so we can let
Okay.
everybody else go.
You lovely people can leave if you wish. And
Bye.
we'll finish up.
All right,
Go ahead.
thanks.
Bye bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hi, Jerry.
Joe,
Hey,
you wanted to
Reeve,
speak with
can you?
chat?
Oh, can you bring up the restream comments because that has the or is there not?
I think I can pull them up.
So Joe, we're gonna try to find so those of you in the chat, we're trying to find the restream comments.
Thanks.
So I think that'll have them.
Once my thing starts working, hold on. Come on, Stream Deck, do the thing.
Do
Okay,
the thing, stream.
so right here.
They're trying to bring up comments, so I can make my comments.
Here
Okay,
you
we
go.
could
Can
scroll
you
up
can
to
you
the-
read this?
No.
Maybe if it would let me do things like this.
Far too small. Far too small.
Hold on. Hold on. I can do. We're fine. Where did it go? Why did it minimize when this? Put it up here to the top. OBS here. Okay, down. Now you can.
We'll
see
be
it,
right with
correct?
you, chat.
We're good. They're good. They can see. Can you see chat now? Be able to.
It's still
Let
too
me get-
small to read.
Can you make the text bigger, Reeve?
I think I can. Look here.
Now I'm going to put on my glasses, see what happens when I put on these. Even stronger, but I still can't read it. It's still too small.
Oh.
Okay,
about
can
that?
you put that into the central view and put us into the gallery view?
They're working on it. There we go. Can you see this, Joe? I can read some to you.
I still can't read it, but it's getting better.
Okay.
Oh, there's Lana Dell. I see Lana Dell.
Right. You had Kay Ryan. Right. I know Dolores was
Yeah,
here.
Cake Ryan. And there's Carmen. I see Carmen,
Yep.
but I still
Right.
can't quite see what they say.
Let me come
Can
back
you
up
make
a
that
bit.
the central screen? Okay, and
Um,
put us into a gallery view?
Reeve, if you want to, why don't we try sharing screen instead? I know you usually don't do it that way, but it might be.
Yeah, it's hard for me to. Hold on.
I know you got a different setup.
Yeah, it just makes it harder to do that. And it's about what you'd see here, pretty much. Actually, this is like my full screen. So, right, this is the biggest I can go, Joe. What you can do, Joe,
Okay.
is right click me, right click my name, Joe, right click my webcam, and
Okay, right click your
and
webcam.
pin me, please. Yep.
How do I do that? Do I right click?
You
up
right
at
click
the
in the
top?
middle of the square, and then pin.
Oh, when I do that, it looks bigger.
Yep, it should make it full screen.
Okay, pin you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That should do it.
Are you
Oh,
able to
there
see
we
it?
go. Okay, there we go.
Yep, you can see now, right?
Yeah, I can see now. It's okay. I can do it now.
Carmen Munez, get rid of Pelosi. She's an M for A neoliberal obstruction.
Okay, going to the top of this, I see Stephanie Udy.
Yep. Come back down. You said right here.
But scroll
there
up,
was some
higher.
timeout issues, I think. Stephanie Udy, Jill isn't a Russian asset, but she is opportunistic, cold, and loves to hear herself talk. I was extremely disappointed after meeting her.
I see. You had a problem after meeting her.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so Nicole, but Nicole Her asks, why am I in timeout?
Yeah,
I
I
have
think
no idea.
I have
That
no
would
idea
be
why.
to the mods who would have put her in timeout.
Yeah, I don't know which one that was. I was watching the chat and I didn't see anything wrong. I think it was just an accident. But
Okay, so Carmen
rumor has
says,
it
Howie is
Howie's
a
in the
diamond
hospital.
that ain't been found, Dolores. Yeah, Howie is hard for people to find.
He's apparently in the hospital right
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
but that's not public. Well,
now. Okay. Well, I mean, Indy was putting in chat.
right. Well, yeah, I guess it is now. Okay.
E. Heller, Howie Hawkins, human equivalent
The
of a wet
equivalent of
sack
a wet
teddy
sack of teddy bears.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, but I'm not sure exactly what it means. Carmen says Howie Hawkins all the way.
Yep.
Indy says Arnold's ex-wife would agree with you. E.
Yeah.
Heller. E. Heller says no,
No,
not
not
Arnold.
Arnold. Yep. But
And somebody
Yep.
says, let Sabby speak. I think we did
Which
let
we
Sabby
did.
speak, didn't we?
yep.
Okay, Ryan
Did.
says, had a doctor's appointment the other day, not sure how well that will work out. Took blood work and a urine test. I do not want to be tied to doctors.
Being tied to a doctor is rough. I mean, going to a doctor's office, sure. Like,
Lana says, Article 3, Section 2, the exceptions clause. Thank you again for that important tidbit of knowledge, Dr. Joe.
yep.
You're very welcome.
I think we're just about at. Just
How do you
showing up.
pressure Jaya Pal? I think you go to her house with an extremely large group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think even doing those like direct action, those like, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but do you remember the days of a journalist waylaying a, politician as they go back to their car?
Yes, I do
like that
remember
used
that.
to be something journalists would do. Would be constantly trying to get, it seems like as long as they go out the back door, they're, or they're waylaid by the normal paparazzi, who just want, pictures of them and talk about stuff that doesn't matter. You need to do
Yeah,
like
they
what.
used to do that all the time.
Well, yeah, Hunter S. Thompson waited till Nixon went into the bathroom, and then when Nixon started talking. That sort of thing. So, but Holly Horn talking about
in the
going on
hood
strikes.
have been surviving using urban lingo since the slaves sang underground railroad messages in the fields.
Yep. Yep, about how to get messages out and stuff. Let's see. Florida does have
Holly
it
Horn
bad.
says Sherry Hankala.
Well, and Carmen Muniz talking about the Florida outlawing protesting. Yep. Can
Yeah.
confirm. Even though we still kind of do, but it
terrible.
has to be sanctioned. And it's dumb. But partially that's DeSantis trying to like use COVID to
He's trying to raise money.
Yeah, I mean, he also is like,
says, honestly, don't really know
if we can't go out and people can't form large groups, that must mean protesting should be illegal right now, that sort of stuff. But
that must mean protesting is illegal down there now.
Yep. It is 10:40. Let's scroll all the way up to the top right here, which I think we got through everything. It's about.
Okay, so I think that's probably the beginning, isn't it? Or is that the end?
This is all the way at the top. Right? So, as far as I can
Okay, go down to the bottom and see what happened earlier then.
New messages. Yeah, people
so
talking
that's
about
the
things
bottom,
being
right?
an accident. But the cha-cha.
Someone else was also timeout, so it was probably an accident, you assume. We need Warren Mosler for Prezzo. Joe F. Won't run.
Yeah.
Yeah, Warren Mosler would be pretty good for president, actually, I think.
But
and he is certainly well off enough to run. Yeah, Warren Mosler would probably have Stephanie Kelton as his Treasury Secretary.
right. Well,
However, you know what the real best thing would be?
what?
If Stephanie Kelton was the president, okay, and if Warren Mosler was the head of the Federal Reserve, okay, and if Randy Ray was the Treasury Secretary,
Well, I think we're gonna call
they
it a
would
night,
turn
Joe.
the country upside down. Huh?
I think we're gonna call it a night, Joe, so I can end this stream. It's been good talking with you
Okay.
and everyone else that got to show up. I wanted to say thanks to everyone from KRTD. Again, hit that like
Hey,
button,
thank you,
subscribe button
Reef,
if you're still
and
here.
thank you, Shane.
Yep. All right, everyone. Goodbye.
Good night.
Bye.